Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to session 4 of the Regional Dialogue on Ocean Data, Finance, and Governance for Sustainable Ocean Development. My name is Cheryl, and I'm a research fellow at the University of New South Wales Center for Sustainable Development Reform, and I will be your guide for this session. So our session today is titled Clean Energy from the Sea, Accelerating Marine Renewables Regionally. So across South and Southeast Asia, our ocean holds enormous potential for clean energy, from offshore wind and tidal power to wave energy and ocean thermal systems. But in fact, it's been said that these resources could meet 100%, so just 100% of the region's electricity demand and create millions of jobs by 2050. But there are still major gaps that hold us back. Data seem to be fragmented, incomplete, and not always accessible for planners, communities, and other stakeholders in the energy sector. Governance is also a challenge where we have complex regulation, unclear permitting pathways, and weak coordination across institutions and borders. In finance, for example, there are emerging technologies that face high risk premiums and limited bankable track records. So while we see that the potential is huge, the reality is that without regional and stakeholder cooperation on data, governance, and finance, we risk this opportunity. And I must say, today's session is quite interesting, at least for me personally, because I have not fully understand the complex and the diverse marine renewable energy sector, and perhaps many of you here as well. So it may feel like a niche topic or something new, but in truth, it is actually one of the most urgent and important conversations in our energy future. So that's why I think today's dialogue is very timely, where we discuss actions to bridge the gaps and move from fragmented national and local efforts towards a more coordinated regional or national strategies. So while the panel is ongoing, we encourage everyone to add your comments, your questions, and even some of your ideas in the Q&A chat box. And if we have time later on, we can read some of them and invite our panelists to respond. So with that, I'll now hand over to our facilitator, Dr. Kyra Ismail from the University of Malaysia, Terengganu, who will guide us through the introductions and discussions as well. Kyra.
Thank you, Cheryl, and hello, everyone. My name is Kyra Ismail. I'm from Blue Economy Advancement Center, University of Malaysia, Terengganu, and I'll be guiding our panel discussion today. And I echo what Cheryl said. I'm very excited for this topic. I think it has a very huge potential, but it is still underdeveloped, especially in our region. So as we said just now, our session focuses on clean energy from the sea, accelerating marine renewables regionally. And we have 3 excellent speakers with us, each bringing unique perspective from policy, law, and industry, and also hands-on experience on their own projects. So before we start, the flow of our dialogue will be that we'll hear short presentations, about 5 to 7 minutes from each of our 3 speakers. And then we've moved into guided discussion with some reflection questions. So please feel free to write your questions in the question box. And if time permits, we'll direct your question during the guided discussion. And should some of the questions are not addressed, we will share them to the panel personally. And also you're welcome to contact the speakers via email. So let me now introduce our first speaker. Dr. Mary-Ann Joy Franco is a senior consultant at Aquaterra with over a decade of experience advancing renewable energy projects across Southeast Asia. So her work combines market analysis, policy development, and community-based energy system with a research focus on how energy-poor communities adopt clean technologies and the policy implications for sustainable development. So I would now pass the floor to Dr. Mary-Ann. Please welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Cheryl and Dr. Kyra. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone in various time zones. Thank you very much for your time and interest to join this panel. So as what Dr. Kyra said, I'm Mary Ann Franco, a senior consultant in Aquaterra. I'm very much happy to be part of this workshop. Next slide, please. So just a quick introduction about our company. So Aquaterra is an environmental consultancy that operates globally from the hub in Stromness, UK. So we offer environmental expertise and operational support for offshore, coastal, and land-based projects, aiming to make people, communities, and businesses more sustainable. So we work on diverse range of clients from MNCs to local community groups and has operated over 25 countries globally. Next slide, please. So as we're talking about ocean renewable energy, what is ocean renewable energy actually? So ocean renewable energy simply refers to drawing power from the ocean to generate energy specifically from tidal currents, tidal range, waves, temperature, and salinity gradients. Fun fact, it is technically wrong to say tidal wave because these are two different types of ocean movements, but it has become an expression of magnitude. While marine renewable energy is a more general term that refers to anything in the marine space, which generates renewable energy electricity. So that includes offshore wind, floating solar PV, and ocean renewable energy. So most of the time, people interchange these two concepts, but technically they are different in scope. Next slide, please. So again, I won't go through this slide one by one, but just to show you that Southeast Asia actually holds a significant ocean renewable energy potential with an estimated regional capacity of 1 terawatt, primarily from tidal energy. So we can go back to this slide later if you have specific questions, but just to showcase the different potential theoretical and practical of ocean renewable energy in Southeast Asia. Next slide, please. So as we learned from our regional studies and collaboration efforts on Ocean RE, the development of this type of technology in the region presents both clear opportunities and significant challenges. On the opportunity side of things, we can learn from mature industries like offshore oil and gas to accelerate our growth. We can also create local solutions such as off-grid energy systems for regions' many rural islands. ORE will have positive economic impact, as we know, creating jobs and improving livelihoods for coastal communities. Finally, Ocean RE is reliable, clean energy source that helps us mitigate climate change with growing policy support across the region. However, there are also challenges, of course. Ocean RE projects have high costs, making them less competitive than fossil fuels and also compared to other renewable energy systems. We may also face issues such as social resistance from communities concerned about environmental impact. And finally, political hurdles from complex bureaucracy can actually slow down the progress. Next slide, please. In developing ocean renewable energy in Southeast Asia, we've learned not only the opportunities and challenges, but we must address both the known and unknown consequences of developing this sector. On the known side of things, our intended goal is actually clear: to provide reliable, clean energy for our communities. However, we also know that there are unintended consequences that we must manage, such as environmental impacts, high import costs of actual tidal turbines if it's not developed within the region, and potential community resistance. Now, let's look ahead to the unknowns. We have intended opportunities like new frameworks for ocean space, significant economic growth, development of local supply chains. Yet there are critical unintended risks that we must prepare for. These include conflict due to lack of clear regulation, project failures from poor infrastructure, and scaling challenges without more demonstration projects. I think our path forward requires to be more proactive, anticipating this risk, and seizing these opportunities to build a sustainable and successful ocean renewable energy industry. Next slide, please. The role of local communities are vital to the success of ocean renewable energy in Southeast Asia. Their involvement ensures social acceptance, helping people understand the technology and fostering long-term adoption. Communities can also see livelihood enhancement through training and access to essential equipment like freezers or for fishing village. By participating, they provide actual local manpower and resources, which lowers cost and makes project more sustainable. This collaboration allows for crucial knowledge sharing as community feedback help tailor technologies to local needs. Ultimately, their partnership ensures energy access for off-grid areas, making ocean renewable energy projects socially inclusive, economically beneficial, and environmentally sustainable. Next slide, please. And I think this is my last slide. So in summary, there is agreement among experts and scholars that potential energy can technically be harnessed from the oceans of Southeast Asia. When utilized, this potential can help address the push for the region to achieve sustainable development through renewables and possibly act as alternative energy sources, especially for energy-poor islands of the region. But unlocking its full potential depends on our ability to navigate the challenges, the knowns and the unknowns. We need to address those consequences, from environmental impacts to scaling issues. To succeed, we must move beyond pilot projects or demonstrations. We must implement clear regulatory framework and ensure local communities are at the heart of our efforts. Ultimately, by focusing on strong governance and collaborative approach, we can overcome these hurdles and turn the industry to a cornerstone of region's clean energy landscape. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. So these are the studies that we have collected from different Southeast Asian countries and shows that there is actual progress in terms of research lab demonstration, actual simulation, tidal turbine design, and all of this. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Marianne. I think there's a lot of potential, but as you said, it's all still in pilot and demonstration. So I guess that's like up for discussion now. How can we move to full scale of getting the best out of this RE? So next we have Dr. Natasha Larkin, which is a lawyer and a researcher at UNSW Center for Sustainable Development Reform. Her work focuses on legal and policy framework for energy transition, and her PhD examined Australia's emerging offshore wind sector, and she also brings extensive experience from senior roles in law and international development. So I now hand the session to Dr. Natasha for her presentation.
Thank you very much, Kyra, and thank you for inviting me to participate today. As is the custom in Australia, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm here on Dharawal country, the traditional owners, which is the land of the Wadi Wadi and Yuin nations. I'll just start with a little bit of general comments about offshore wind before looking at robust regulatory models. As many of you would know, we've had decades of maturity for offshore wind in Europe, beginning in Denmark in 1991, and this is now significantly expanded. Across the globe, there's some 83.5 gigawatts of offshore wind installed. And China has really emerged as the leader by a very large margin in recent years. So nearly half of the world's offshore wind installed capacity is in China. And China also has a very well-developed supply chain. The Asia-Pacific region is now really positioned, as Dr. Mary said, for significant development in the next decade. Aside from China, Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea have an offshore wind sector and are really looking to expand this. Australia, the Philippines, and Vietnam are really emerging markets, and so we're seeing this development of regulatory and policy frameworks. And then countries like Thailand and Indonesia are recognizing their potential and putting offshore wind into the mix of their broad energy planning, but still very much early days. And this is really significant because offshore wind offers not only a kind of gigawatt scale of energy to decarbonize as we move away from fossil fuels, but it also reduces reliance on imported coal and oil. And this is particularly important given geopolitical uncertainty, particularly since the Russian invasion of Ukraine really spiked energy prices. But we're seeing now a kind of global instability as well. Offshore wind is complex. It's technically complex. It relies on global financial circuits and has complex stakeholder arrangements around competing marine interests and existing uses and attachments to the ocean. And that is why a very robust and transparent regulatory framework is really important. And as Dr. Kyra said, my research is focused on the Australian frameworks, but today I want to overview some of the models and best practice. So here on the slide, you can see some of the types of models for regulating offshore wind, and they range from the sort of competitive auctions where private developers compete predominantly on price, but also some non-price components. And then there's sort of models where the state plays a much more active role, not only in site selection and administration, but also in the construction of projects. The Australian regulatory framework involves the government allocating certain spatial sites for development, and then developers apply through an administrative process for feasibility licenses, which last for 7 years, and they are non-price criteria. And then we have what we might call hybrid arrangements, and these are kind of general categories here. They're not really clean categories. And so with these hybrid models, you see various kinds of public and private arrangements. And each of these countries have very different geological features, political systems, energy markets, and marine use, and also different access to finance, which shapes the kind of regulatory models that are available. So really there's no key, like one right model, but rather I want to focus on what a good model should include. The next slide, please. So just a few observations here, and this by no means is comprehensive, but the first is really about best practice is policy certainty. A clear roadmap for developing the sector is needed, not only around the licensing framework, but also around marine spatial planning for site allocation, supply chain development, workforce readiness, and preparing port facilities. There needs to be very robust data. And here I draw attention to the work of my colleagues at the Centre for Sustainable Development Reform and the work they're doing around ocean accounts to understand the economic and social connections and assets of the ocean, which can inform these policy decisions. The second is about oversight by a dedicated and competent authority, and that is through the whole process. So from site selection and the pre-phases before developers or a license is issued, right through to the end of decommissioning projects. The next is around a transparent competitive process for prospective developers. And here, increasingly countries that have just had a price-only kind of framework are moving towards looking to non-price factors as well. So that sort of recognises the impact on the environment and the need for viability around projects and extracting a reasonable benefit to the community, while sort of recognising the global constraints on the industry. There needs to be some flexibility here for industries as they mature, particularly because the global circuits of finance make offshore wind vulnerable for projects falling over. The risks are quite high. And then the last is really about the need for early and meaningful engagement, including, in countries with First Nations communities. And we've seen across the globe, from Germany to Australia, that when there's not procedural justice or energy justice, projects are contested, and that ultimately is undermining the sector. So the last slide, please, just finish with a bit of a snapshot of emerging markets. And this is by no means comprehensive, but just to bring your attention to Vietnam and the Philippines down the bottom, where we're really seeing this development of marine spatial planning frameworks and policy frameworks to support the industry. And this will be really significant to position these countries as important within the region more broadly, not only in terms of offshore wind construction, but also the supply chain that can support projects globally. So I'll leave it there, and thank you. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Natasha. And I think it's really important for us to know about the best practice so that we don't start from zero if we were to move into large scale renewable energy regionally. So thank you for the engaging share. So we've heard on the policy and also legal perspective, and let's move on to our next speakers on industry. Our final speaker, Mr. Muhammad Fauzi Yasir, who brings over 35 years of experience in energy sector, particularly in oil and gas, and he now leads strategic technology solutions in renewable energy and the hydrogen economy at Petronas, with a focus on advancing the net zero carbon emission 2050 aspiration. So previously, he managed sustainability initiatives in low carbon energy and efficiency, and he currently advises on Green Hydrogen Hub project. So Mr. Fauzi, please take us through your insights.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, I need to display again. Okay, just quick one. On behalf of Petronas, thank you very
Mr.
much for.
Fauzi, I think
Yeah.
you have to make it not this is where we can see the slide. Yeah. So it cannot be full screen apparently.
Okay,
Yeah,
never mind.
so
Just
this is okay.
then. Okay, you see the pack, yeah?
Yes, it's all good now.
Okay, now while Petronas is embarking into a new energy segment, because we know the fact that while the fact that our hydrocarbon is start depleting, and there's a lot of challenge while Petronas actually embark into new energy, and this new energy sectors is very much focused into RE, hydrogen, and some of the circular economy with regards to bioenergies, base and whatnot. And because of that, we also considering being in this region. Malaysia is one of the rich and biodiversity is blessed with natural resources. However, we see a challenge at this moment. While Petronas is very much expert in offshore industry, and we are exploring the opportunity. While we know that the green on the ground at this moment is very challenging in terms of land acquisitions, and that might be a challenge for us to really diverse from onshore standpoint of view, i.e. we come up with this particular concept of what we call a center for RE. It is merely about showcase and proof of concept of ocean technology, where we actually work together with UMT and some partners, looking at the potential that we can harvest these natural resources, renewable energies, and generating a power. And the concept here is very much combining what you call that the technologies. In this case, it's mature technologies, yet has been installed in any nearby Malaysian beaches and also shore. We are actually installing a floating solar PV. We tested last 2 years in two areas. One is a very deep water and one near shore, just to see whether first the integrities of that particular technology when we see a wave and also crash wave. And we also test wind turbine. While we know the challenge in Malaysia, many people don't believe that winds works, but it is where we believe it works. Then we actually put that as one of the concept hybrid of wind energy and also solar. Onshore, we have offshore rooftop and also wave energy converter, while to manage the sustainable energy for round the clocks, we also install a battery energy storage. And at this moment, since this is not connected to grid or distribution network, we use that access to produce ice, and this ice is actually free for the nearby fishery to help them in some of the socio-economic. Let me move on to what actually the reality. This is the reality at this moment for wind turbine on a structure. And in the middle is actually the solar PV floating. The unique, it is actually kind of hybrid. Both are connected together through the offshore substations at one of the wind turbine. And the size of solar PV floating is about similar to one football pitch. And the wind turbine with capacity is about 20 kilowatt each. Is small, but we started with small because we just want to prove that wind works in Terengganu. And this connected to shore about 1 kilometer away. And near shore, we have wave energy converter developed by postgraduate of UMT and mix that with a battery. The key reason here is merely to prove round the clock of RE. That's the mission that we want to prove. In Malaysia, in energy sector merely, we are allowed to install a ground mounted solar with the capacity cap at 30% of total generations of Peninsular Malaysia. However, the challenge of our ground mounted solar is intermittency. That's where our purpose is merely together with UMT to prove that we can produce around the clock RE base. And probably to prove it works is next. Yes, wind works in Malaysia at last. I'm very pleased to see that we view some of the views that wind doesn't work in Malaysia. And with floating solar, we having a challenge with the monsoon season. Yes, that again, we face that challenges. You see, just like a cloth on the water. And the wind at this moment, when this is recorded, is about 21 meter per second. It is still intact. And though it is not a complex design, yet we managed to actually come out with a very unique design on the anchoring as well as the wave breaker. So now, what important for this particular case is it helps not only the first phase of socio-economic and also the capability building. As far as what we see at this moment, it is almost 90% of workforce was local, except some of the experts that we brought in for wind turbine installations, whatnot. The same token, it actually built a capability for local that I believe at this moment in Malaysia, Terengganu-based resources is the only personnel that we see had managed to reach that capability. And we use our local capability as well to install this particular wind turbine. And the one that I mentioned is about supplying ice to fishery is actually helps the socio-economy surrounding that area. That is just a spin-off of what we do. And what important is basically is the mixed energy, where we want to prove that from what we have, based on the live data campaign for the past 3 months ago, we should be able to manage the optimizations of energy mix between wind, solar, and also battery. So with that, when we actually design this without a data, we believe that these are the best configuration and scheme. While we combining the scheme and the real data, we observe that we would be able to further optimize and see whether we can bring down further the levelized cost of energy. And that proved that some of these ideas basically would be able to run down the cost driven by battery. Battery at this moment is still considered high cost. And with this data and some algorithm, we should be able, when we do a scale up, that we should be able to reduce the size of battery to 26%. That will bring down some of the cost to about 10% lower. So these were one of the key things that we would drive. However, we are going to observe this for the next monsoon season, second round, so that we can get the real data. We installed 2 LiDAR systems and also the HIMARS to really collect the data, real data, and try to stitch together between the real data and the scheme, so that we can find the right algorithm in managing based on digital and AI, how we manage the consistent energy output from this energy mix. So this is my last page. So thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Mr. Fauzi. I guess that's very technical in comparison to the two speakers that we have, but definitely there's it's very interesting point to now move to the discussion. And I would also like to encourage all the participants who would like to ask questions to any of the panels or to all of them. So I guess while we're listening to this, we know that there are challenges, but definitely I would want to know like more of the opportunities, because I see that there's a lot of potential in terms of technical, in terms of the policy itself. And what do you see as a low-hanging fruit that could accelerate marine renewable energy in our region? And these quick wins might also be like the game changer for scale through regional cooperation. So this is a question for all of you, and please feel free to hop on, either Dr. Mary, Dr. Natasha, or Mr. Fauzi.
Yeah, I mean, I can go first. I think learning from Mr. Fauzi, and it's good to see that hybrid energy system is being done on that scale, because it's quite interesting as well that even for community energy based, and this is to address your question, Kyra, too. I think the path moving forward is not really to divert or to go ahead directly on implementing ocean energy per se on a big scale. It started with with a phased approach and hybridized system, as what Mr. Fauzi said. Even for community energy-based systems like the smaller scales for households, we did have a study that combining battery, solar PV, and small-scale tidal turbine has actually lesser localized level LCOE than just having a tidal turbine alone. And take note of the capex of that, of actually investing on those types of systems. So even though we see that the challenge basically is, tidal turbines are quite expensive on the onset, but if you think of it of hybridizing it with other more or cheaper renewable energy resources, then we can have a win on that. So it's actually good to see that even for large mid-scale system, hybridization is actually a key. Because I can definitely tell and say for community energy-based projects, the smaller scales one, we actually wanted to have that thinking as well of hybridization.
So maybe to add on to that question, in terms of the cost itself, so does the hybridization will actually sort of more cost effective? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have Mr. Fauzi raising his hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, probably I would like to share my view from many angle. Being currently looking at what else that we could do from REs. I'm actually also lead the team to look into the hydrogen economy and hydrogen ecosystems and focus on very much green hydrogen. So when you talk about green hydrogen, the only way to do is through RE. So that's where I'm very much focused into that notion. However, I do believe across the world, global, this is very much probably very relevant to Natasha here. Is about the governance, is about the law acts across global, where these are the real challenge. And knowing this RE, they can be anywhere, and also the hydrogen can be anywhere. So you still need to evacuate the electrons to supply the electrolyzers somewhere else. So these are the situations. At this moment, hydrogen generally still be seen as a very expensive of molecule, right from the electron generations into electrolyzers, touch base on the technology itself, as well as how it goes into the molecule. Excuse me, moving into green molecule like ammonia or methanol, and or even an energy mix to decarbonize the combustions type of power plant. Example, fuel gas based gas turbine with little mix with hydrogen, so that you can decarb or lower the carbon notion. So the challenge here, while we know the fact that technology can be done, whatever ideas and scheme can be done, the challenge here maybe I may need to have some views from Dr. Natasha here in regards to governance and acts. Very simple example in India, they are also moving into green hydrogen through RE. And the beauties of this particular notion is the government really give them a support, and whoever get into hydrogen economy and hydrogen ecosystems, there is no willing charges. These are the challenge, willing charges actually, or the excess charges of electrons moving into a production of hydrogen. In Middle East, NEOM projects, the same thing. In America, in US, it's the same thing. Australia is the same thing. So globally, the challenge is very much to bring down the hydrogen cost. However, what actually the high cost content is merely about electron, where when you talk about hydrogen productions, almost 70% of the energy come from the RE, from the electricity. So imagine those numbers, really kill the economics of hydrogen. While we know that there are future for hydrogen, there are future for green ammonia, green methanol. However, we need to really manage the costs at the off-taker so that those hydrogen costs become competitive. So now, I want to share what exactly from a governance stand from form of view, or maybe you're talking about policy example. In Malaysia specific, we have what we call tariff. And that tariff is basically built from the facilities, utility systems, where the most of the cost is for the transmission and also the distribution system. You can hit the best LCOE to produce direct hydrogen. Yet, if that locations of RE is somewhere in a very remote, I still need to overcome the transportations of the gas. So these are chicken situations here. So my experience on this is basically we need to advocate the policy in such, if you're really serious about building the ecosystems clean and green through RE, moving into molecules, those tariffs or willing charges need to be advocate and look at what is the combined cost between electrons and molecule. I'm saying this from real experience, and we are moving into what we call implementation, and we are advocating the policy and driving in such that government would be able to shape the policy in such facilitating the hydrogen economy in this context, moving into clean and green technology. That's my view. That's where the first steps that we did is to prove that we could get, while if we were to manage to scale up the CEFORE into gigawatt near shore, that would be able to reduce the cost. That's my view.
Okay. Dr. Natasha, do you have any comment on that? Perhaps what is the practice elsewhere in terms of the tariff itself? How is it in Australia?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. It's getting the economics right, because what we're seeing globally is that projects are falling over because the economics aren't stacking up. So I think there's lots of different forms of addressing that risk, and we're seeing lots of different models. So there's some countries that had feed-in tariffs. Australia didn't have a mechanism within its regulatory framework, but most of the feasibility licenses that have been issued in Australia down in Gippsland is the state government, the subnational government is entering into a sort of contracts for difference model, and I think that's one model. So it's about risk sharing and recognizing that this is quite a globally unstable and quite sensitive industry. Quite some distance away from where you're trying to
Natasha, I think you're breaking.
markets are coming up, then you need to look at addressing the risk factors, whilst also, as I said before, protecting the environment and looking at what is a reasonable.
Yeah, I think Dr. Natasha is breaking. All is okay, right? Yeah, perhaps we'll move to the next question. Yeah, okay, so perhaps we'll move to the next question from Nigeria. So he asked if we can kindly elaborate a better approach for respecting global laws and policy by all countries in addressing the various mechanism and framework agreements on ecosystem protection and restoration. Maybe we can have Dr. Mary to perhaps take on this first.
Sorry, the question is, hang on, please kindly elaborate better approach for respecting global laws, so countries and addressing various mechanisms. I think Natasha would be a better person to express it, but it's okay, she's breaking up. But I think from my perspective, it's always a combination of top-down and bottom-up approaches. Of course, global laws and policies are already there. Achieving certain targets, especially for NDCCs, we have that every country. I think how it translates into national, local, and the community level is where the challenges are. And I can just give you an example for the Philippines. The Philippines would have, the most sophisticated framework on RE and even on NDCCs and its targets for climate change adaptation, and mitigation. But when it translates into national, local, and at the community level, it's where the challenges is. It's like the implementation part of it. So what has been proven working in terms of like, especially for community-based energy projects in the region, in the Philippines, is really having the communities themselves a part of the planning process. Even before you deploy any system, you explain it to them, you engage them and empower them with information. So we talked about data sharing a while ago and the importance of data and transparency in how data are collected. To be fair, especially for the island communities, they know where best to place these kinds of systems. And I think that's where sometimes we are, overly excited about a demonstration site. And we tend to forget that, oh, you should actually ask the communities themselves where they actually wanted to put this. And we have some circumstances or in situations wherein I think it was in Indonesia or either in Philippines or Indonesia, wherein there was a deployment of a small scale tidal turbine, and the fishing communities were like, what is the impact of this to our fishing? So there's already that resistance on the onset, and without explaining them the planning purpose in the planning part of it, it's already the resistance already started. So I think and I might not answer your question directly, but I think it's the combination of top down approach and the bottom up, and that's where the struggle and the challenges always meet. And the winners and losers, and mostly the losers of it, are the communities that are not part of this planning and decision making process.
So maybe taking on that, Mr. Fauzi, when you were doing CEFORE, was there a lot of community engagement at the start of the project, or is it like later on, or how was it with the community engagement happen? Like, or was it just a more of a design approach between academia and industry, and then later on there's a community engagement later? How was it?
Okay, let me probably share how we actually developed that C4. The number one, definitely looking at what are the relevant impact in the context of environment, in the context of society, in the context of even surrounding areas, whatnot. And those should be well coordinated across the systems in the government. Example, in this case, Terengganu, we use the planning unit to really coordinate the whole sectors, relevant sectors, including the oceans, environment, or including the onshore development. And in fact, we should actually consider the representative of the society to really manage the sentiment within that surrounding area. That's our experience. Similarly to what have actually gone through on the hydrogen economy as well, government play very, very important role. While being an enterprise organizations, we always talk about growth, we talk about business, we talk about enterprise, yet we cannot discount the surrounding element that we need to consider. Those need to be really context with the right relevant agencies and ministries to make sure that those are handled correctly. Whether we are lucky or not, I think the policy that we have in the government sectors in Malaysia, I think they are well organized and well coordinated. We didn't see any situations in regards to managing the stakeholders. Basically, you talk about the society. So I do agree with the views from our participant here. We have to, within the frameworks of advocacy, within the framework of stakeholders management, is very key to make sure that every single demand requirement need to be considered as part of the development. So through C4, we don't see any real challenge because we know the fact that what is in front of us So we need to make sure that all are well coordinated, so that we get the right support, not only from the government, but also from the surrounding society.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Fauzi. I think that sort of like answer a little bit from what we have on the last question from Ghana, where what in terms of reducing community resistance, so what is the best approach to involve the communities in co-designing and implementing ideas? So I guess Mr. Fauzi did cover a little bit on that. So can we have Dr. Mary and Dr. Natasha to probably conclude and give a bit comments on this? Mary or Natasha? Yeah.
I can go ahead. So I think one thing, and just to add on to the answers that was given by the panelists, is the capacity building bit. Although we knew about ocean renewable energy from UK, from the northern our countries, it's still quite new and niche in this region, in Southeast Asia, basically. So equipping the necessary skills is a key component of success, especially for community-based energy systems and island communities, which involves ocean renewable energy. And this involves building not only the technical skills, like operating or maintenance of the system themselves, but actually, as I often tell it, the orgware, the organizational ware, the mechanisms where people can actually own or be the stewards of these energy systems, not only as beneficiaries of the electricity that is being produced into the systems, but also actually own them eventually, specifically for small scale and renewable energy projects. And I think the question here is co-designing and implementing. Yes, of course, they need to be part of it, but even before that, even during the planning and pre-feasibility design of the systems themselves, needs community engagement. And I think I can only share in one of our current project now, floating PV system, a small-scale floating PV system in Indonesia, in seaweed farms in South Sulawesi. Even the design of that small-scale FPV system, the community has the say. Need to know. They need to know where to put it, and because they know where actually to best put it. So it's really the transparency of data sharing and information and planning on the onset of the project and post-project as well. So we see that the deployment itself is the exciting stage, but for me, it's usually the pre-planning and post-project. So
yeah, I think it's really the local knowledge and also the sense of belonging if they're part of it, right? Yeah. So maybe last word from Natasha before we end this really exciting topic.
Yeah, and sorry I dropped off before. Absolutely agree with what Mary was saying. I think early engagement is really critical. It's difficult because something like offshore wind is very technical, and so you're really trying to put forward a lot of technical information to communities. But my experience of observing it is that communities have a lot of knowledge that is relevant, and that long and meaningful engagement will ultimately make projects more successful. So a really key role for the state and also developers to engage in a meaningful way.
All right, thank you so much. I really don't want this to end, but I guess we have to be on time. Thank you once again to all the speakers and participation for this very engaging discussion. I hope you don't mind. If any of the participants would have a further question, they can contact you via email. And I think that's all from me, and shall give back to Cheryl for a bit of a wrap up of this session, and I'll see you next time, hopefully.
Yeah.
To you, Cheryl.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Kyra, and also to our panelists, to Mary, Fauzi, and Tash, for their valuable insights. I've learned about, ocean renewable energy versus marine renewable energy, even tidal waves and tidal waves, but also the idea of community participation, community engagement, but also the importance of governments. And at the start of session, I said that this session feels unfamiliar, but also urgent and important. And what we've heard today confirms exactly that the opportunity is vast. We can do a lot of things, but the gaps on governance, on finance, on the economics part, and even the community impacts must be close if we really wanted to unlock the marine renewable at that scale. So the good news is that we have solutions that exist. There are science and the technical capabilities through community participation and perhaps stronger legal framework and demonstration projects. And it's just exciting to hear of all of these solutions. So as we close, I would like to remember that while this sector seems new to many, the power to transform the region's energy sector is not only creating electricity or lights, but also jobs, equity, and of course, resilience. And just some housing like logistically, we just want you to take a moment to scan the QR codes now on your screen. One will take you to the regional dialogue page. The other one is the interest survey, where you can continue on engagement and you find the resources. And we will be uploading these webinar in our YouTube page, and we would also share the QR codes. Another QR code is to connect you to the session materials, including the slides that our panelists presented. So we warmly invite you to stay connected, and in behalf of our organizers, UNSW, GoApp, and UMT, our facilitator, Dr. Kyra, and of course, our panel, thank you once again for being part of this discussion. And as we conclude session 4, we look forward to seeing you in the next session. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.